Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz. This is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Sunday, May 5th, 2024. And if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my daily rundown best bet in the MLB, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. There's also a link in the description. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Sunday in Major League Baseball. First up, it's the Colorado Rockies taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Ryan Feltner and Bailey Falter are your starters. I got to mention, my voice is going out a little bit for today's rundown because I actually, unfortunately, did the entire rundown and realized the microphone was not turned on, so the quality of the audio was too bad. I had to delete every video. So this is rundown part 2 for Ron. And in this matchup, Ryan Feltner, he has not been great this season, ERA above 5, but, he's been better in recent games. Saw our last game against the Marlins, 8 innings, 3 runs, and you're facing a Pirates team who's got some of the worst numbers in baseball against righty, especially recently. And so I think Feltner pitches well, and Falter gave it up 5 runs his last game, not in great form. I think the value's with the Rockies in this one. I'm going to go with Colorado on the money line. Next up, we see the Detroit Tigers taking on the New York Yankees. Tarek Skubal and Nestor Cortez are your starters. And Tarek Skubal's in great form. He's been one of the best pitchers in the American League this season, 4-0 with a 1.72 ERA. Great strikeout numbers. The Tigers have won 4 of his last 5 starts. On the other side, Nestor Cortez, 4 earned runs given up in that last game with 8 base hits to go with it. The Yankees have lost each of his last 4 games. And, when you look at the numbers, while the Tigers aren't a great offense, they actually have better numbers offensively than the Yankees do against lefties this year. So we get the Tigers, or we get one of the best starting pitchers in baseball at a great price because it's the Yankees on the other side, one of the more popular teams, a team with a great record and a team playing at home. But to me, I think the value's with the Tigers. I'm going to go Detroit on the money line. Next up, we see the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Washington Nationals. No official starter for Toronto, but Mackenzie Gore should be going for Washington. I'm going to do what I did in the first game of this series when the Blue Jays faced a lefty in Patrick Corbin. While Gore is definitely not Patrick Corbin, it is known that the Blue Jays hit lefties pretty well this year. And, I mentioned I don't love the Blue Jays bullpen. This could be a bullpen game, but I definitely think the Blue Jays would have the advantage in the first 5 innings or so. And then, like I mentioned that first game, the Nationals may be able to rally late like they did. And, they were down early, but they found the W late on Friday. And that's why I just want to isolate this to the first 5 innings. I worry about that Blue Jays bullpen right now. So give me Toronto in the first 5 innings. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Angels taking on the Cleveland Guardians. Griffin Canning and Carlos Carrasco are your starters. 2 starting pitchers that have really struggled this year. Canning's got that ERA above 7. Carrasco's on his way there. When you look at his current form, giving up 13 earned runs in his last 2 starts with 15 base hits, 5 home runs to go with it. I got to go with the over here. Griffin Canning, only 1 strikeout with 5 walks in that last game against Philadelphia. It looked like he was starting to sharpen up, but he follows it up with that game against Philadelphia, and he's gone only 5 1/3 innings or less in each of his last 5 starts, so he's not pitching deep into ball games. The Guardians are a really pesky lineup. They can limit strikeouts and work pitch counts like nobody's business, so I think Canning struggles. And Carrasco, while the Angels lineup is missing Mike Trout and was already struggling to begin with, we saw him score early against Tanner Bybee in the first game of this series, and I think they'll still be competitive in this game, so I'm going to go with the over here. Next up, we see the New York Mets taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Luis Severino and Ryan Pepiot are your starters. I like the opposite in this game. I like a couple of unders here. Luis Severino, great form right now for the Mets. He, sub 3 ERA at this point in the season, pretty impressive. His last game against the Cubs, he flirted with a no-hitter. 8 innings of 1-hit, 1-run baseball. Now, the Mets lost that game in the end, but it was because the Mets offense struggled, and I expect it to be the case here against Pepiot, who's in great form for the Rays. His last 5 starts, he's given up 1 earned run or fewer in 4 of those 5. Great strikeout numbers. The control's been a lot better. I'm going to go with the under here, Mets-Rays. Next up, the Boston Red Sox taking on the Minnesota Twins. Cooper Criswell and Joe Ryan are your starters. I mentioned I liked a couple unders. This is another one. Joe Ryan, while he's not been great at target field, he's still pitching well overall this season. I think he pitches well, quality start in this game. And Cooper Criswell, he's been really solid in his role, as a spot starter for the Red Sox, who we mentioned dealt with so many pitching injuries early this year. They've been forced to go with guys like Criswell, Bernardino, Josh Winkowski, as like spot starters out of the bullpen, and they pitch well. And it's one of the reasons why the Red Sox team ERA is one of the lowest in baseball right now. So give me the under in this one. Next up, we see the Seattle Mariners taking on the Houston Astros. Bryce Miller and Hunter Brown are your starters. I mentioned that I do expect Hunter Brown to get back to the form that we saw him in his rookie year, but It's just not the case right now. I mean, he's 0-4 with that ERA just below 10. He's 6 earned runs, 2 home runs in that last game against Cleveland. Now, the strikeout numbers are starting to pick it up. 13 Ks in his last 9 in the third, and you're facing a Mariners team that's known to strike out quite a bit. So, he should be able to miss some bats, but even if he pitches well in this game, you got the Seattle Mariners bullpen and Bryce Miller on the other side, who's in great form. His last game against the Braves, 7 innings of 1-run ball with 10 strikeouts against one of the best lineups in baseball. And the Mariners are 4-1 in his last 5 games. They've taken down some tough teams along the way: the Brewers, the Cubs, the Reds, the Braves, like I mentioned, and the only loss was against the Texas Rangers. So for me, I got to go with Seattle in this game. I just don't think there's a lot of room for error for Hunter Brown, and I think Seattle's the play. Next up, we see the Texas Rangers taking on the Kansas City Royals. John Gray for Texas, no official starter for the Royals. After a rough start to the season, John Gray's been excellent. Now, he hasn't always pitched deep into ball games, but, his last 5 starts, 4 earned runs combined in those games. And, his strikeout numbers kind of been inconsistent. Like, he only had 3 Ks in 8 innings against the Nationals. But to me, it's impressive to see John Gray, be able to pitch well against a team that has a low strikeout rate like Washington does and has great numbers against righties. Because you're facing another team like that in the Royals, especially in the last couple of weeks, the Royals' strikeout rate against right-handed pitching very, very low. We saw the first game of this series with only 4 strikeouts in the whole game against the Rangers. So John Gray had a 13-11 ground ball to fly ball ratio in that one. He kept the ball on the ground against Washington. If he does that here, he should be able to win this game. The Royals' bullpen could be a bullpen game. While it's pitching well recently and the ERA is pretty low, the expected numbers, the xFIP, is the 3rd worst in baseball, so I expect a lot of regression for the Royals bullpen. I'm going to go with the Texas Rangers in this game on the money line. Next up, the Chicago White Sox taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. Garrett Crochet and Kyle Gibson are your starters. Garrett Crochet was a lot better in that last game against Minnesota, but still wasn't enough for the White Sox to win that game, and he still gave up a home run in that one, making it at least 1 home run in 5 of his last 6. The Cardinals don't have great numbers OPS or ISO-wise against lefties this year, but they have a very low strikeout rate, a very high walk rate, and a pretty low BABIP. So I expect positive regression for this team and for this lineup against lefties especially. And I think Crochet could struggle in this one. And, he's not pitching really deep into ball games. His last 5 starts, 5 innings or fewer in all those games. If the Cardinals are, a team that does a pretty good job at working pitch counts, I think they can get him out of this game by the 4th, 5th inning. And, when you look at the White Sox bullpen, some of the worst numbers in baseball. Kyle Gibson's in great form. He's had 3 straight quality starts, giving up 1 earned run or fewer. Good strikeout numbers recently, 15 Ks last 13 innings. So give me St. Louis on the money line in this one. Next up, we'll go to the NL Central as the Milwaukee Brewers take on the Chicago Cubs. Freddie Peralta and Javier Assad are your starters. It was nice to see a bounce-back start for Freddie Peralta in that last game against the Rays. Really just 1 mistake pitch. It was 1 home run, 1 base hit given up in 5 1/3 innings of 7 strikeout ball for Peralta. And he's pitched well this year. He's actually been one of the more profitable pitchers in the league because the Brewers have yet to lose any of his starts. They're 6-0 in Peralta starts this year, so not too shabby. Javier Assad's pitched well himself this season, but I think the Brewers have the much better bullpen. I don't think Assad pitches too deep into this ball game. So similar to the first game of this series, if it's a close game late, got to give the edge to Milwaukee. Give me Milwaukee in this one on the money line. Next up, we see the Miami Marlins taking on the Oakland Athletics. Sixto Sanchez and Joe Boyle are your starters. One of the big problems for Joe Boyle in his time in the minor leagues and so far in the major leagues has been the walks. His control has been off. A lot of walks this season, 20 of them in 26 2/3 innings. He's had at least 4 given up in each of his last 3 games. So he does give up a lot of free passes, but he has a great velocity on his fastball, about 100 miles per hour in the early innings for Boyle on the fastball. And you're facing a Marlins lineup that is struggling offensively. They lost their best hitter in Luis Arraez, one of the best hitters in baseball in the trade this week, and they have one of the lowest walk rates against right-handed pitching this season. So this is actually a pretty decent matchup for Joe Boyle. And with Sixto Sanchez struggling, mightily in the starting pitching role, he was much better in the bullpen, now giving up his last 2 games, 8 earned runs, and only 6 2/3 innings. I got to go with the Oakland A's in this game on the money line. Next up, we see the Atlanta Braves taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Max Fried and James Paxton are your starters. Now, 2 lefties on the mound in this game. These are 2 lineups that had pretty slow starts against lefties to start the year, but now they're top 10 in baseball in OPS against lefties, so they're really picking it up. And when you look at the starting pitching matchup, James Paxton, I think, has big-time regression concerns. He's got a 3.51 ERA, but a 6.2 xFIP and a 6.16 expected ERA. He has a 22 to 15 walk to strikeout ratio, not strikeout to walk. He's given up 7 more walks than earned strikeouts this year. I think eventually, especially a team like Atlanta, will be able to get to him. and I expect that ERA to go way up as the season continues. When you look at Max Fried, he's somebody that started the season with a steep ERA because he wasn't able to get out of the first inning against the Phillies. He gave 7 earned runs against the Diamondbacks. He had a really rough start to the year, but since then, he's been one of the best pitchers in the National League. His last 2 games, 15 innings of shutout baseball with 13 strikeouts to go with it, and he's pitched really well at Dodger Stadium in his career with a sub-3 ERA. So I'm going to go with the Atlanta Braves in this one, who I also believe is the much better bullpen in this series, on the money line. Next up, the Baltimore Orioles taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Dean Kramer and Nick Lodolo are your projected starters. We mentioned that Dean Kramer last year was one of the more profitable pitchers in Major League Baseball. So far this year, that's not been the case, but it is turning around recently as the Orioles have won each of his last 2 starts. I think overall he's in much better form recently as well, giving up 3 earned runs or fewer in each of his last 3 starts, earning some more strikeouts. But, while I do think the Reds will be able to get to him, this is a tough matchup for a starter that's had issues with the home run ball. Great American Ballpark, not really the best place to pitch, but I think the starting pitchers honestly cancel each other out because Nick Lodolo, while he's pitched really well, I do worry about him at home, similar to a guy like Graham Ashcraft, and the Orioles have great numbers against lefties this year. They, OPS, isolated power, you name it, they have done really well against lefties. So I think these starters kind of cancel out, and if that's the case, I think the Orioles have the advantage because I think they have the better bullpen, and their offense has just been known to be, really good in the late innings. So I'm going to go with the Orioles in this one on the money line. Next up, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Matt Waldron and Ryan Nelson are your starters. I'm going to take the Padres in this game. Ryan Nelson's first start back from the 15-day IL. He's somebody that last year really struggled at Chase Field. Now, his last game at home was solid, but I still think the Padres get to him for a few runs. And, Matt Waldron's been really sharp on the road this season. At Petco Park, his last 2 games, he's given up 4 earned runs, 5 earned runs, but on the road, he's got a 1.1 ERA this season. Arizona struggled against righties. Give me the San Diego Padres in this one. Also, the bullpen, I think San Diego has the much better bullpen, so give me the Padres on the money line. Next up, we see the San Francisco Giants taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Logan Webb and Taijuan Walker are your starters. Logan Webb, we've backed him at Oracle Park. We usually fade him on the road. He's just a lot better at Oracle Park, especially against teams that have a ground ball percentage that's pretty high. But, this matchup on the road, I don't think it's miserable. I don't think it's an amazing matchup either. I think Logan Webb gives the Giants 5 to 7 decent innings in this one. He's a very efficient starter, so he usually does pitch deep into ball games. Last game, his pitch count got way up, though, early. He was only able to go 3 2/3 innings, but I think he has a bounce-back start. The problem for me with Philadelphia is Taijuan Walker. I just don't think that he's ready right now. We saw the rehab starts, just the numbers weren't great, especially the per 9s, and, so far in that first game against San Diego, he was honestly rather fortunate to, at one point, be having a quality start. For some reason, the Phillies stretched him out to try to go 7 innings. It just didn't work out. We saw a home run from Luis Campusano in the 7th inning, and he was giving up a lot of sharp contact. He already gave up a home run earlier in the game, so he was getting a lot of fortunate outs. He had made an amazing play on the mound. It was a line drive right to the back of his glove. So to me, there was no reason to stretch him out, and we saw the real problems, in the 7th inning. I think that the Giants get to him for a few runs early. I think eventually he'll get to the form that we're used to seeing from him, mid-season form. But right now, early on, I'm looking to fade him early in the season, so I'm going to go with the San Francisco Giants on the money line. And that's it. Those are the games for Sunday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Romanelli. Good luck.